Hey everyone, it's me again, Brittany, and I'm here today to do my October wrap-up. We're gonna forget about the fact that I haven't done a wrap-up in a few months, because if I had to talk about all those books, I likely would procrastinate making that video for forever, and then this video would never come out. So realistically, we just have to jump into October, and then from here on out, just have wrap-ups if that's what we want. I read 7 books in total, but I feel like they were just some really impactful reads. I don't know. I think it's just because they were definitely different than my normal reading tastes. As I said in my TBR, if you missed it, I feel like my mind was ready for non-fantasy, but like my soul was not ready to hear that. So I kept forcing myself to read more and more fantasy, and it just was not hitting the same. And I theorize that that's why I was in my slump for so long. But October was a really cool reading month, and I'm excited to talk about all these books with you guys. I mean, as far as like quality, there was only one 5-star read. There were a few that were kind of meh, and there were a lot of 4s. So I mean, it was a very wide array of ratings this month. So we definitely have things to discuss. For this one, I'm really not going to be focusing on summaries. Like, I'm going to give you a brief idea of what the book is about, but if you want to know more, I always link them down in my description, so please follow that link. They are affiliate links, so I mean, if you were to purchase something through them, I get a very tiny commission. If you don't want to purchase through them, that's fine, but I just put them mostly there for you guys to be able to get a better summary, because I am not good at summaries. So let's dive in. The first book that I read in October was The Night Swim by Megan Golden, and I actually gave this 4 stars. This was kind of a surprise overall. I mean, October started off very strangely because I didn't have shelves for like a month, so it was really hard for me to find the thrillers that I had been saving for October for a while, but I remembered getting this in a recent book of the month, so I was like, you know what, let's give it a shot. The Night Swim follows a podcaster, and she is a true crime podcaster, but her podcast is the most famous in the entire nation, and she kind of set the tone for the rest of the true crime podcast. She follows old podcasts, and the reason that hers became so large is because the first one that she ever covered, she uncovered a piece of evidence that actually set an innocent man that was in jail free. So she has a lot to live up to, and on her 3rd season, she decides that she's done covering cold cases. She's gonna follow a trial as it unfolds in a small town where a star athlete, a boy with all of his future ahead of him, has been accused of rape, which obviously he says he would never do, and that she just wanted to withdraw her consent because she didn't like it. Right off the bat, our podcaster definitely sets the tone for how it's going to go, because while she does try to stay unbiased, she definitely looks at how rape is still such a touchy subject overall. Everyone can agree that murder is bad, but rape is still such a toss-up because, oh, if they withdraw consent, then suddenly that's rape, and that's bad, but it shouldn't be bad, and why is there such a gray area, and why is it somehow the victim's fault? And it really delves into that, and she hopes to delve into that as it unfolds. But when she gets to this town, she is also kind of thrown into a cold case that happened years and years before, but she doesn't know who the person is that's giving her these clues. But the person says that she knows that her sister did not commit suicide that night, that it has to be something bigger. I feel like I gave you a very thorough summary of what The Night Swim was about. Don't expect that for all of these, but I really did enjoy this. Obviously, I did give it 4 stars. I will say I did find it pretty predictable overall. Like, the actual mysteries in both of them felt very obvious to me. I felt like we knew all along who the culprits were and who was going to go down for the crime, and overall just like the general idea of how it was gonna go down, but I wasn't unsatisfied. Like, the way that the mystery unfolded and the way that we're told the stories and the events that happened, I think was very satisfying, and I like the way that it was done. I will say there are plenty of trigger warnings. Definitely for any thriller and horror book that's gonna be on this list, just look up the warnings if you are sensitive to any of the material. I said something in my thriller recommendations that was something along the lines of like, the gruesomeness in the Poppy War for me didn't compare to the gruesomeness in some of these thrillers, and I kind of wanted to clarify because they are different genres, 100%. They are different situations, so obviously I'm going to react differently to them, and there's going to be a lot more emotion maybe in in one than the other, which makes sense. Like looking back on it, that totally makes sense as to why I can look at maybe the brutality that was in the Poppy War and kind of draw it in and be like, okay, yeah, but this is just war. While when I'm looking at a thriller, it's real life and it feels so much more icky, I guess is the right way to put it. I mean, it's a soft word for the way to put it, but it's how it felt. I would definitely say that you need to be cautious going into this. I mean, the scenes in this were very graphic without being graphic, is the only way I can put it. But yeah, 4 stars. I really like this. The next book that I read in October is a hefty one, and that's The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton, or this is also known as The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, depending on the print that you have, because it came out at the same time as 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. But I actually gave this 4 stars. I will say this book kind of dragged. Let me give you a little bit of a summary, but we are obviously following the 7 deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and we're in our narrator's body, but he doesn't know who he is, and every morning he wakes up in a different body as he tries to discover how Evelyn Hardcastle died and potentially put a stop to it. But this story ended up being so much more than just that. I loved the way the mystery unfolded in this, even though it was very, very slow. I thought about giving up at like the 30% mark. I just was kind of not interested at that point. But I'm glad I pulled through because the way that this ended was definitely worth it. I didn't see the twist coming at all. I really didn't see this mystery unfolding in the way it did at all. I knew that it had to be mysterious. Obviously there's something paranormal going on if he's waking up in a different body every single day to figure out what happened. He's reliving the same day just from different points of view. You knew that it had to be paranormal, but the way that Stuart Turton did this was interesting. I like it. It gave me Shutter Island vibes. It gave me like Inception vibes. It gave me so many cool vibes. I liked the ending. I liked that it was kind of open. Oh, which is something that I wanted to say actually about The Night Swim. I liked that it was open for like potentially a series following that podcaster as she follows other cases. I liked that. And I also like that 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle was left open so that potentially we have a follow-up to this, because now that we understand the world a little bit better and what was going on, I think the follow-up would be way better than this one. Now on to a book that I wasn't that satisfied with the ending. The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I want to preface this by saying I do understand that this was kind of the prerequisite for all other paranormal horror books from the reviews that I read. I could be wrong, but the reviews that I read of this kind of put this as the first haunting style book. So in that sense, I understand. I understand that it wasn't going to live up to the expectations that I had of what a haunting book should be, but I still think it's a 2-star. Originally, I gave this 3 stars if you watched my vlog, but sitting back on it and thinking, I just don't think that this was an average read for me. This was below average. I mean, if you saw Haunting of Hill House, I wasn't even really comparing it to that. I mean, for me, the show was definitely better if we're gonna compare it, but I wasn't comparing it to that going into the book because I knew it was gonna be different. I thought originally that this was a prequel. I was wrong. This is definitely its own thing. I mean, we do definitely have characters that we would recognize from the TV show, but they are not like the characters in the TV show. This is not a family living in a house. This is a group of people under a researcher's wing, because this researcher really wants to see what is going on in Hill House. And he got permission from the owners of Hill House to be able to conduct a little study over the summer and to invite a few people. He invites his assistant, who is Theo. Then we have a random girl who has had paranormal experiences even though she doesn't see it as paranormal experiences, which is Eleanor. And then we have the boy, which I keep forgetting what his name is, but he is like to be the owner of Hill House one day. The owner of the house wanted him there so that, you know, he could watch over things. And they're just supposed to be there for the summer and kind of like write down their experiences, see what's going on, see if it's really paranormal or if it's just a very confusing house. The way that I look back on this book is it feels like a fever dream. Like, I don't understand what was going on. It didn't stand out to me. It felt like a fever dream. If you look back on it, it's hazy for me. It's not a lot of jump scares. I mean, there's really no jump scares. There's some spookiness to it, but overall it seems more of like a psychological psychological battle as we are in Eleanor or Nellie's head. She was not totally there from the start. She, in the very beginning, before she ever gets to Hill House, I was already confused. I thought I didn't understand and I could not follow her train of thought, but I thought it was gonna eventually make sense, and it just continued to unwind. And the relationships in this didn't make sense to me because it seemed like the boy was gonna be more of a vital piece, but he really wasn't. And then Theo and Eleanor, they were like sisters, but also like enemies, but also like friends, but also they hated each other, but also they loved each other, but also they never wanted to see each other again. And it was very off-putting. I just felt off. And that was the general spookiness of this, was feeling like, you know, the spooky music that can be in creepy thrillers like Insidious. So in Insidious, that it had that very like screechy, weird soundtrack that made you feel unsettled. That's how this felt for my mind. To be fair, I think I would have liked this a lot better if there were a couple more chapters at the end, because even though I understand what happened, I get the sequence of events, I still would have loved to have just 2 more chapters to kind of expand on the idea, to really get me to think about it instead of me being like, okay, yeah, that's what happened. Because it felt obvious to me, but maybe it shouldn't have? I don't know. I don't know, guys. Next on this list is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and I gave this 4 stars. There's a lot of 4 stars in this month now that I'm thinking about it. To give you a brief idea of what's going on, Alex, she can see ghosts. And she attends Yale, and she's in the Ninth House. And the Ninth House is one of the secret society houses, one of the old secret society houses. But they look over the 8 other houses, because these 8 houses that we have all actually known, because they are based off of the real old societies in Yale, they're not what we think. They are magic societies, and they need someone to keep them in line, which is what the Ninth House does. And Alex's ability to see ghosts is not normal, and it should be very helpful, but it kind of is a very difficult transition for her because she never really thought she was going to be in Yale, and she definitely never thought that she would have to use her gift of seeing ghosts to potentially solve a murder that might not be connected to any of the 8 houses, but that also might be connected to all of them. I read this in one sitting. I couldn't put it down. I will say, I think that if I read this physically, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much, but I listened to it audibly while I like decorated and distracted myself, and I just couldn't put it down. I wanted to keep listening until the end, but this book definitely lost me in the last like 20% or so. What I loved about this is the flashbacks. We're actually told a lot of Alex's story and her mentor story in flashbacks, and those surprised me to no end. I felt like all of them were new and mysterious and just such a great addition to the story, and I normally don't love flashbacks like that, but this time I did. Other than that though, I don't think that the actual mystery was very subtle. I felt like I figured it out right away. I did figure it out right away, but I was like, no, there's no way I figured it out just now. Let's think about other people. But it turned out to be the one that I thought it was, and it wasn't satisfying in the way that it was like, oh, I'm right. It was more of like a, oh, I knew it. How did no one else know it? You know, I just didn't feel satisfied, which is why I definitely got knocked down a star. I also really wanted this to wrap up a little bit better. I know that this is to be a series, and so obviously you needed something that was gonna motivate you to read the next book, but I wanted an ending to one of the subplots, and I didn't get it. I mean, obviously it's gonna be in the next book. I hope it's gonna be in the next book, but I felt like that was also an obvious situation, and maybe that's why I was expecting it to end in this one, and when it didn't happen, I was disappointed. So the ending of this one was not it for me. It dragged, it was lengthy, and it felt obvious, but the rest of it was really cool. I loved seeing the secret societies. I loved kind of getting Alex, who was not supposed to be there. She was definitely an outcast, and I like the way that Leigh Bardugo writes outcasts, because it's not like a, in my opinion, it's not like a, ooh, not like other girls kind of outcast. It's more of like a, no, I'm really not pretty or cute or going to be pretty or cute at any point in this story. I am just here, and you know, you're gonna have to accept that. That's what it felt like. At least I think that she perfected it maybe in Alex. And even though, okay, let's address the elephant in the room. That would be cool. Let's address the elephant in the room. Alex's name is Galaxy, but to be fair, her mom's a hippie. So I'm pretty sure. They never outwardly say it, but like I'm 90% sure her mom's a hippie. So it was kind of fun, and Alex was definitely an interesting character to view Yale from, because she isn't really supposed to be there. I liked it. I just didn't like the ending. This one I didn't expect to give such a low rating, but it's still not a low rating. City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab, sorry. This I gave 3 stars. I know, weird, right? I did like this. This is why I say that 3 stars is not a bad rating. It's an average rating, but just a brief idea. We're following Cass, who is, I think, an 11 or 12-year-old girl who is kind of dealing with the aftermath of having almost drowned. I mean, in reality, she does drown, but she comes back to life, and that process gave her the ability to see ghosts. And she hasn't really talked about it with anyone except for her ghost best friend. Her parents don't know. Which makes it all the more ironic when her parents end up getting their very own show to be hosts of, discovering the most haunted places in the world. And their first stop is gonna be Edinburgh. And Edinburgh is known as the City of Ghosts, which is gonna be interesting for Cass because, you know, again, she actually can see them. I think what fell flat for me is I think that the way that Victoria Schwab writes middle grade didn't sit completely realistically with me. I think that maybe she wasn't giving Cass enough credit and then she was giving her too much credit, because Cass was a very mature character in a lot of situations that call for maturity that likely a girl her age would not have, but she did drown, so to be fair, maybe she does have it. And then in other ways, she was extremely naive, and that could be really how an 11 or 12-year-old thinks, but I guess I'm comparing it to just how my mind was at 11 or 12, and the main thing that stood out was really the fact that, like, Cass was sitting there and she was like, what's fish and chips? This isn't a chip, this is a fry. Vinegar on food, biscuits, those aren't biscuits, those are cookies. And like, she was very adamant about not understanding the slang, and I feel like, am I alone in remembering knowing all those words when I was 11 or 12? I know I'd watched something that told me about fish and chips. I thought it was hilarious, you know? And I probably would have like rolled with the punches more. I guess that's what it felt like, because Cass, I think as a character, rolls with the punches, and instead she was very adamant about not rolling with the punches in the slang. So I felt like that was strange. She was 100% the stereotypical not like other girls that Victoria Schwab tends to write. But that all being said, I loved the actual like paranormal aspects of this. The story really unfolded way bigger than I thought it would. It got a little bit spooky. It got very spooky, actually. It got dark, and I enjoyed it for that. And I really think that Victoria Schwab just maybe needs to like find her groove a little bit better with middle grade, because I think this was her first, and I would 100% be willing to read the next book, and I think I'd like it better, just because, again, I'd be interested to see how Cass has grown as a character and how Victoria Schwab has grown as a middle grade author. But I like that she kind of finds her purpose in this, and I just want to see where it goes. I'm shocked that this ended up being my least favorite book of the month. I'm truly shocked, because it really, in the very beginning, was looking to be one of my favorites. Night Film by Marisha Pessl. I've been saving this book for ages, and I think I just saved it for too long. I think it just maybe did not withstand the test of time, because this was definitely 100% one of the most popular books on BookTube at one point, but I didn't love it. I gave it 2 stars. Just as a brief idea, we're following the assumed suicide of the daughter of an infamous director. And this director has written the darkest, most depressing, most terrifying horror movies. They're so dark that they have to be underground. Like, they are not published or made by regular media. Like I said, this was definitely looking to be amazing. I loved the beginning. It automatically drew me in. I was so intrigued by the plot. I had no idea where it was gonna go. And then about 50% of the way through, I was like, ooh, this is kind of starting to drag. And then it felt like everything got wrapped up. And I was like, okay, that's strange though, because we still have like 30% of the book left. Of course, it got unwound. And then it got tied back up. And then it got unwound. And then it got tied back up. And it was just frustrating, because it felt like the plot twists that were happening were all centered around the exact same situation, and it just felt like, oh no, it's this, just kidding, it's actually this, no, it's this, no, just kidding, it was actually that, like the entire time. And it felt so annoying. I was like, just pick a side. And I knew where I wanted it to lie. And I understand it, because I think it was just the narrator himself was maybe a little too realistic for my flavor. I didn't love him as a narrator. I felt like he wasn't a very great person. He was very consumed by this mystery, and he was kind of leaving his actual life behind. His daughter was kind of on the back burner, which I didn't like for most of it. It just felt strange. It's definitely just not my taste, I think. And the way way that it ended was extremely open-ended. Like I think I know how it was supposed to end. I think that like the way that I'm thinking about it, that is 100% how it's supposed to end, but this lets you decide. And it doesn't give us anything. I would have wanted at least a little bit of the conversation, because there's like a seat. He's like walking in to talk with a person and then it's done. But it just felt so unfinished, and it felt like a cheap unfinished. I get wanting to make the reader think, but God, give me something. I don't know. I didn't like it. This was not for me, but I can also see why some people would absolutely adore this, because it is open-ended. It is kind of like spooky, but not spooky. It lets you make your own decision about the book, and I don't like that because I don't make decisions very easily. That's my theory. And I saved the best for last because I did it. I finally read Uzumaki by Junji Ito. I gave this 5 stars. This was my only 5-star read of the month, and I'm glad that it was my only 5-star read of the month because it was amazing. It was amazing. I loved my intro into horror manga. I'm ready to read the next one. If you watched my TBR, I'm getting ready to read the next book. Well, it's not like sequential order, but like I'm reading another one. But I loved it. Uzumaki, I'm not gonna give you much details. All you have to know is that it has to do with spirals and how this town becomes consumed by them, or the people become consumed by them. I mentioned in my vlog, I was like, I feel like the thing about this that makes it like cool is that it's almost like body horror, but it's not something that I'm gonna think about for a long time because it's not realistic horror. Like, it's very out there. But the thing is I have not stopped thinking about it. Like, it appears in all of my thoughts, which is kind of funny because that's sort of like the obsession in the very beginning of the book, is one person's obsession with spirals and seeing it in everything. And ever since I read this, I obviously see it in everything, because when you read something or get told about something, you see it more just because you start, you know, noticing it more. And it's just so interesting because, I mean, it's not like I'm scared. I'm not sitting here thinking that spirals are gonna consume me or anything like that, but it's just something that keeps popping into my head because when I notice myself thinking about it, I start thinking about the story and I'm like, this was amazing. This was incredible. I wasn't sure at first, but the more I've thought about it and the more I've sat on it, it's 100% a 5-star. I highly recommend this. Again, it's extremely body horror, so if you don't like that, if you don't like seeing it, because it is, you know, it's a manga, so you're gonna see the body horror, I don't necessarily recommend it, but the concept is amazing. The concept is just, I don't know how we thought of this. Like, how? It was amazing. It was amazing. Amazing. So yeah, those are all the books that I read in October. Again, I had a really cool reading month. I feel like I discovered a lot about my own tastes because this is the most like horror and thriller that I've ever read, and I definitely want to read more, which, like I've been saying, if you watched my TBR, I definitely am continuing on this train. I'm just ready for it. I think that it's just gonna be a fun new thing for me to do, and I'm excited. I'm excited. Let me know if you read any of the same books that I did, or just in general, let me know what your favorite read of October was. It doesn't have to be like a spooky book or anything like that, but I would just, you know, I think it's fun. I think it's cool to chat in the comments. I try to answer as many as possible, but I've been doing my best at least hearting it once I've read it, because I know that I don't do my best at that, and I really want to show you guys how much it means to me to see your comments. It really, really does. I wasn't always great at responding to them, even if I read them, because I always read them, I just wasn't good at responding. So I've been trying to do better at that because, you know, I should show a token of my appreciation for you guys being so cool. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this video today, guys. I really appreciate you guys watching. I'm so hyped to have this kind of routine back in my channel, to know I'm doing TBRs and wrap-ups every month. It's very settling to my nerves, so I hope that you guys enjoy them as well. I love y'all so much. I hope you're staying safe. I will see you in my next one. Goodbye! Hey everyone, it's me again, Brittany, and I'm here today to do my November, not my November. Hey everyone, it's me again, Brittany, and I'm here today. Oh, can't talk. Can't talk. Okay. Okay. New battery. I did figure it out. Also, my ring light's acting up. It just is not doing good. I'm not doing good. No, I'm doing fine. In comparison. Okay, this is a struggle. I'm on a struggle bus. Oh, and I hope you're living your best spooky life. Duh.